The last of the evening traffic was thinning out on Highway 87. It was 9:15 p.m. in Crestwood, North Carolina, and the humid summer air was thick enough to taste. Officer Dean Harding was killing time in the dark parking lot of a closed-down laundromat, nursing a bitter, lukewarm coffee. He was about to call it a night when a black Lexus LS slid past, smooth as a shadow. His eyes narrowed. Another one, he thought, driving through my town like they own it. The windows were dark. The plates were from out of state. The car itself gleamed with a quiet authority that grated on him. It wasn't speeding, it wasn't weaving, but it was there, and that was enough. Harding pulled his cruiser onto the highway, the engine growling. He flipped on the lights, enjoying the flash of red and blue against the Lexus's dark paint. He tailed the car for 30 seconds before hitting the siren. The Lexus signaled immediately and pulled over by a brightly lit BP gas station. Inside, Judge Althea Williams sat perfectly still. She was in her mid-50s, her judicial robes still on from a long day at a state judicial committee meeting in Raleigh. She was tired, not the kind of tired sleep could fix, but a soul-deep weariness that came from decades of watching the names change while the game stayed the same. She powered down her window. Before a word could leave her lips, Harding was there, his flashlight beam aimed directly at her eyes. License, registration. Now, he barked. Her voice was like polished stone. Could you tell me the reason for the stop, officer? Harding ignored her. He swept the flashlight beam across her passenger seat, then into the back. He was looking for a threat, or an excuse. These windows are too dark. Plates are out of state. You from around here? Judge Williams's expression didn't change. I'm a state judge. My residence is in Chapel Hill. I'm returning from a committee meeting. She passed him her driver's license, the car's registration, and her judicial ID. Harding barely glanced at them. His eyes were fixed on her. His hand went to the grip of his service weapon, resting it there. A judge, huh? We'll see about that. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step out of the car. On what grounds? She asked. Her voice was still perfectly level. Obstruction, he said, the word coming out too fast. You're not complying. The judge didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply reached forward, tapped her phone to begin a video recording, and placed it on the dashboard, the lens aimed squarely at him. I am complying fully, officer, she stated. You requested my documents, and I have provided them. I have a legal right to know the probable cause for your order. So you want to play it the hard way, he snapped, his face tightening. She said nothing. The silence hung between them, heavy in charge. The neon sign of the BP station buzzed overhead. Across the street, a young man in a hoodie stepped out of a Circle K, saw the scene, and raised his own phone. He started filming. Harding saw him. It only made him angrier. Get out of the car now, he commanded, his voice rising, or I'll pull you out myself. That would constitute an illegal search and seizure, she replied, her tone hardening just enough to carry a warning. And you are aware of that. He reached for the door handle. The moment his fingers touched the cold chrome, he felt a shift. It wasn't just the click of the lock engaging. It was the absolute certainty in her eyes. Officer, she said, her voice now ringing with command, I am warning you. This entire interaction is being recorded. You have no legal grounds to open this door. His pride was a roaring fire in his ears. I gave you an order, and I am following the law, she countered. You are not. He yanked the handle. It didn't budge. With a grunt of frustration, he slapped the window with his open palm, the sound cracking through the night. Unlock the door. No. The word was final. Not angry. Not scared. Just a fact. From across the street, the young man filming took a step closer. Hey, he shouted. Leave her alone. Harding ignored him, grabbing the radio from his shoulder. Dispatch, I need backup on Highway 87. Possible 1056. Driver is uncooperative. The judge's eyes narrowed. You just filed a false report, officer. That is a gross abuse of your authority. He leaned in close to the glass, his face contorted. You think you're above the law? No, she said, her voice dropping, carrying the weight of the entire justice system. I am the law. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, maybe, or just annoyance. He leaned in closer, his voice a low sneer. You people always think you can talk your way out of anything. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel, but her gaze never wavered. You people, she repeated softly, letting the words hang in the air between them. He took a step back, rattled by her composure. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were supposed to yell, to cry, to give him a reason. Her quiet dignity was an accusation, and it infuriated him more than any resistance. Inside the car, Judge Williams took a single, deep breath. This feeling was horribly familiar, but it had never happened like this. Not since she'd earned the robe. Not since she'd started running the committees and giving the speeches. She told herself, told her students, told her daughter that things were getting better. But this felt like a ghost from a past she thought she'd buried. Headlights swept the scene as a second cruiser pulled up. This one rolled to a stop slowly, deliberately. A sergeant, Frank Miller, stepped out. He was older, with tired eyes that had seen everything. Harding rushed over to him. "Sarge, thank God. This one's a real piece of work. Refusing all my commands, non-compliant, handing me what's probably a fake ID." Sergeant Miller wasn't looking at Harding. His eyes were fixed on the woman in the Lexus. He saw her face framed by the driver's side window. He saw the phone on the dashboard, its small light blinking. His face went pale. "Oh, hell," he muttered under his breath. He knew exactly who she was. Harding blinked. "Sarge? What is it?" Sergeant Miller shot him a silencing glare and stepped to the driver's window, his posture instantly respectful. "Judge Williams?" he asked, his voice low. Althea Williams finally allowed herself to relax her death grip on the steering wheel. "Yes, Sergeant. I'm Sergeant Frank Miller. I sincerely apologize. Are you unharmed?" She gave a sharp nod. "I'm recording this for my safety. I was given no reason for the stop, and your officer ignored my credentials and tried to illegally open my car." Miller's jaw tightened. "Understood, Judge. I'm handling it." He turned to Harding, who stood by the cruiser looking lost. "She was being..." Harding started. "You've said enough." Miller cut him off coldly. "Get in your car. Turn your mic off." The command was a dismissal. Harding's face flushed, but he obeyed, slumping into his cruiser. The small red light on his body camera kept blinking, silently documenting the implosion of his career. Outside, Sergeant Miller stood by the judge's window. "Again, Judge, I am truly sorry." "Sorrow doesn't fix this," she said evenly. "I identified myself, provided my documents, and asked a legal question. In response, your officer threatened me. That was a choice." "You're right," Miller said, his voice heavy. "It will be in my report." She reached down and stopped the recording. Her face was a mask, but Miller noticed her hands were trembling slightly. He said nothing. "Will you be filing a complaint tonight, Judge?" "I'll handle this my way," she interrupted. "My office will be in touch." She paused. "Sergeant, was Officer Harding wearing a functioning body camera?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good," she said, shifting the car into park. "Then there can be no debate." To Miller's surprise, she opened her door and stepped out. Standing tall in her judicial robes, she had an undeniable aura of authority. She ignored Harding completely and looked Miller in the eye. "I expect to speak with your internal affairs supervisor tomorrow morning." "Yes, Judge." "And that body cam footage had better not disappear." "It won't," Miller promised. Nearby, the young man from the Circle K, Jordan Riley, was still filming. Judge Williams walked over to him. "You got all of that?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am, the whole thing." "Good, hold on to it," she said. "Just in case." She returned to her Lexus and drove off, leaving Miller in a stunned silence. He walked to Harding's cruiser and yanked the passenger door open. "Out, now!" Harding got out, his face a mask of bruised pride. She was arrogant. "She was lawful," Miller snapped. "Careful, Dean. That mic is still hot." By morning, Jordan Riley's video had exploded online. Starting on a local forum, it spread to X and TikTok, racking up over 90,000 views. It was everywhere. When Judge Williams arrived at the courthouse in Raleigh, her phone was overwhelmed with messages from colleagues, law clerks, and the governor's office. Her bailiff Samuel met her at security. "Judge, it's everywhere." "I've seen," she said, not breaking her stride. "Are you all right?" "I've been better." Outside, the story was taking on a life of its own. At the BP gas station, a screenshot of Harding's snarling face was taped to a pump with the words, "This is why we record the police." Reporters were interviewing Jordan Riley, who told them, "He was aggressive from the jump. I knew I had to film it." In her chambers, Judge Williams sat with the blinds drawn. She couldn't focus. Her mind kept replaying the video, the image of her face in the flashlight's glare, Harding's unrestrained arrogance. It looked even worse than it had felt. A knock came. It was Samuel. "Judge, there are people gathering across the street with signs." She pulled the blind back an inch. A crowd was forming. One sign read, "A robe shouldn't be a shield. If a judge isn't safe, who is?" She let the blind fall. This was never just about her. At the Crestwood Police Department, Chief Miles Peterson was in full damage control mode, but it was too late. In his office, Sergeant Miller watched Harding's body cam footage without the sound. He saw Harding ignore the ID, touch his weapon, and slap the window. This wasn't a good cop on a bad day. This was an officer who believed he was the law, and he had just picked a fight with the law itself. Captain Eva Rostova found Sergeant Miller in his office, staring at the body cam footage on his screen. "The chief is suspending Harding," she said, closing the door. "Pending investigation." Miller scoffed without looking up. "Pending? The whole world has seen the video. It should have been immediate. The chief wants this handled by the book, Frank. Bulletproof for the civil suit." He finally turned, his eyes burning with disgust. "This isn't about a lawsuit, Eva." He saw her skin color, her gender, and an expensive car, and decided she didn't belong. He didn't care that she was a judge. This is about prejudice. The silence in the room confirmed he was right. Meanwhile, Judge Althea Williams bypassed the press and went straight to the Crestwood Police Precinct. The officers fell silent as she walked past, their faces a mixture of shock and dread. Chief Miles Peterson met her in the hallway. They sat alone in a sterile conference room. "I'm not here for policy, Chief," she said, her voice like ice. "One of your officers committed a crime. He tried to pull me from my car after seeing my judicial ID. What are you going to do about it today?" "We've placed Officer Harding on administrative leave," Peterson said stiffly. "A paid vacation is not a consequence." "I have procedures." "Procedures are a shield," the judge cut in, her gaze unwavering. "You have video evidence of a crime. You don't need procedure. You need a spine." Hiding in the station's locker room, Dean Harding watched his career burn down on his phone. Harding Exposed was trending. His sneering face was everywhere. He didn't see a mistake, he saw a setup. But with 5 million views in 48 hours, the world had already passed judgment. That evening, the official body cam footage was leaked. The raw audio was a masterclass in the abuse of power, and it forced the city's hand. The pressure from the governor's office and national media became overwhelming. The next morning, Harding was summoned to the chief's office. Chief Peterson, Captain Rostova, and Mayor Ken Walsh were waiting for him. Their faces were like stone. "Dean," the chief began, "we have your footage, the civilian footage, and a sworn statement from Sergeant Miller. Judge Williams is prepared to testify that you filed a false report and attempted an illegal search, motivated by racial bias." The mayor slid a single piece of paper across the table. "This is your resignation," Walsh said coldly. "Sign it and this ends. Refuse and the DA gets the case file. You'll face felony charges. You have 1 minute." Harding stared at the paper, his arrogance crumbling into dust. The system was cutting him loose. His hand trembled as he grabbed the pen, the scratch of his signature the only sound in the room. "It's done," he mumbled. "Not quite," Captain Rostova said. "Sergeant Miller will escort you to your locker. You will surrender your badge and service weapon." The walk of shame was silent. Other cops turned away. In the locker room, he packed his life into a cardboard box, then stood before Miller. He unclipped his badge, the metal suddenly worthless, and placed it on the counter. He cleared his weapon and handed it over. "Is that all, Sergeant?" Harding spat. Miller glanced at a TV in the corner. Judge Williams was on screen, addressing a sea of reporters, her voice strong and clear. He looked back at the disgraced man before him. "That's all, Harding," he said. "You're done here.